Welcome back to Talk 20s, the show that looks at life through a 20-something lens. And in the studio today, I'm joined by personal branding expert, Sam Winsbury. Hello, Sam. Nice to have you on the podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
We chatted ages and ages ago, probably 4 years ago when you were first starting out at what you were doing. And to see what you've built today is really, really cool. But we cannot dive into all the personal branding stuff without seeing your photo from this time last year or your picture from this time last year. So you've got to scroll back on your camera roll and show us what you were doing maybe a year ago. You did just say that exactly a year ago today. Photos you cannot show us. Why is that?
It was it's our COO Lewis's birthday today, who's
Happy birthday, Lewis.
a long-standing friend of mine as well. So we had some celebrations on this day a year ago. But actually, October the 2nd last year it's a photo from our studio in London.
Whoa! And this is like a podcast studio setup.
This is a podcast studio.
Nice.
And we'd had
good.
the space probably 6 months or so when that was taken. But we'd only just kind of kissed it out. So that was like shortly after we launched. I think we launched it in July, but then we had it fully kitted out. So it's a few photos of that. And a lot of whiteboard markings because we basically decided to restructure the whole business in October last year. So there's a lot of whiteboard drawings of how the next 12 months was going to play out.
So do you use a whiteboard to strategize what you're doing in the business?
I'm a big writer,
cool.
Old school pen and paper or whiteboard.
How did you go? Where were you before and where were you after? How did that all go?
In terms of the restructuring?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we kind of, we grew very quickly in the early years, but we were still very startup-y, I'd say, as a business. And we realized that the team structure we had great people in the team that were all really good specialists in one area and good at other areas. But we had people doing all sorts of things. So each person would do basically lots of different roles just merged into one. And we called them personal brand managers. And last year we decided to basically split that up into specialist roles.
Okay.
Which meant we massively increased the team size, but then we could get people doing the things that they were best at and none of the stuff that they were good at, but not necessarily proper experts at. So it was a massive operation, quite expensive, but it's paying off. So.
And what kind of specialist skills do you need? Can you give us the job titles that you now have within your company? Because when I think about personal branding, I don't and possibly people who are listening to this right now who are first coming to personal branding, they're probably thinking, how are there a million different roles to do that? What is it? I just thought it was posting about myself on social media.
Yeah, so we have what we call account managers, who are, it's quite a common role in an agency. In our agency, they are people that speak to clients week to week, and they kind of lead a campaign. So they'll have the communication with the clients, but they'll also head up strategy for that client. So making sure, for example, that before we actually post any content, we have the right kind of content ideas that are going to create the right kind of brand for that client. So they're really strategic. We then have content writers who are specialists for actually creating content, and they'll be the ones that they still have some communication with clients, but they're less client focused, less strategic. They're more focused on writing amazing content, turning their ideas into great social media content. And then we have, we call them social community executives. They really manage the client's community online. So the followers that they build, the comment section, they're people that are in the profiles managing that day to day. And those three roles are kind of the core team that will help our clients.
So that's personal branding at a very extreme level. Tell us a little bit more about your company then and what you do, because you basically manage personal brands for people that are potentially too busy to do it for themselves.
Yes, pretty much. So I run a company called Kurogo, and we basically turn founders and CEOs into thought leaders through building their personal brands. So we do things like, we obviously build strategies for them, we post content on their socials, sometimes we'll pitch them onto podcasts, get them features in the media, to really make sure that their reputation online reflects the quality of work that they're doing offline. So often a lot of people will come to us and they have hugely successful businesses and they're great entrepreneurs, but because they've been so busy building these businesses, they've not taken any time to actually build their online presence. So we find that they've got great businesses, they're really successful, but their online presence doesn't show it at all. And actually they're missing out on a huge amount of opportunity by not having that online presence. So we kind of help them bring that online presence up to the level where it should be.
I love that. And I think it's really interesting for our audience to understand that, most of the people that you might see and look up to online, they might be doing it themselves, but they also might have people like you and people that they're working with to kind of help grow their personal brand. And what we want to talk about today, because we are Talk 20s, is we want to talk about understanding a little bit of how you work with those big top, entrepreneurs and CEOs, and kind of how we can bring that into our own personal brand. So how could someone like me, someone like Georgia, someone who might be starting out in the working world, how can they build their personal brand so that in the long term it can give them loads of opportunity? Tell us a little bit why you think personal branding is so important nowadays.
So if you're in your career, I've looked at a lot of CVs, right? We've had quite a few people. I've probably run 50 plus interviews. I've seen thousands of CVs. 90% of CVs look 90% the same. It is very, very difficult to stand out with a CV nowadays because everyone's kind of cottoned on how to create a good CV, and you have trainings in school on how to create them. And there's only so much you can include on a one-pager about like you, your personality, your experience, your expertise. There's so many things that you've got to include on that one pager. It's very, very difficult to create something that actually stands out. It's also very, I say this with the greatest respect to everyone applying for jobs at the moment, it's very easy to fake a CV or to kind of dress a CV up in a way that it's not entirely accurate. It's quite hard to actually fact check everything, and most employers are too busy to fact check anything anyway. But it's very, very difficult to fake a personal brand. It's very difficult to fake 6 months plus of posting content online, building a personal brand, being in the public eye. It's very difficult to fake that. And you'll probably get found out if you do. So I think a personal brand in your career is an amazing way to set you apart from other applicants or maybe other people in your company if you're looking for a promotion. One of the best ways to stand out amongst the competition.
And do you think, and can everyone have a personal brand? Do you think they should?
Yeah, everyone can. There's probably some industries where business owners might choose to avoid having a personal brand and be out of the public eye. But I think generally...
In what case are you referring to that?
Maybe you run like an oil company, for example.
Right, yeah.
You might decide not to.
Not want to build your personal brand.
But generally speaking, everyone in their careers could benefit from building a personal brand, 100%.
Okay. And if someone is starting out at like the beginning of their career...
Yeah.
Where is the very, very basics that they should get started?
Yeah, so I say the first thing that you want to do is have a goal, have something in mind. You don't necessarily have to have an exact specific goal for 10 years' time. That's very, very difficult. I couldn't even tell you what I want to achieve for my personal brand in 10 years, right? But having some idea of what you actually want to achieve with it and what kind of reputation you want to build online is really important, because if you start without that, you get to all the fun stuff of posting content maybe, which is later down the line, but there's no direction, and you'll find you get lost very quickly, you lose motivation, you don't have a reason to do it. So the first thing is to understand actually why are you doing this in the first place? Why do you want to build your personal brand? Why do you want this reputation? And then you can put steps in place to actually achieve that.
I think a lot of people, when they're starting out, and I definitely thought this in my early 20s, how can I build a personal brand if I don't have experience? Like, you need experience to then often get experience. And then how can I basically just make up and write stuff about that I haven't even done? Like, I'd worry about being a fraud first and foremost. I'd be like, oh, I'm posting about stuff, but like, I don't know how to make it relatable. One person is liking this. What do I even write about when I'm literally just starting? Yeah.
So when you're just starting, remember that you do have life experience. You have some life experience. You don't necessarily have to be the best of the best, the most experienced, the biggest expert to be able to build a personal brand. If you can share content that helps even just one or two people, that's better than nothing. So if you're just getting started, I would focus on sharing lessons from your own personal experience. However short, however small that might be, you will have personal experiences. You have a unique combination of experience and personality and expertise that nobody else in the world has. So just talk from that. Don't try and pretend to be someone you're not. Just speak from the lived experience that you have. On top of that, what you can do is anytime you learn something, teach it. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to know it. And that's kind of how I actually started building my personal brand in the first place and got into the whole personal branding industry, was because when I was at university, I was studying psychology. I wanted to get into the marketing industry. I wanted to try and get some like freelance marketing projects. And I was like emailing loads of business owners. I was like going to events, and everyone was like, "Who are you? You're just this 19-year-old kid." Was a frequent kind of objection that I was met with. And yes, I was 19, right? I was pretty inexperienced. I was just getting started, but I knew more than a lot of these business owners that I was approaching about marketing specifically. And what I decided to do was that any time I learned anything about marketing or the psychology behind it, I would just share that learning on LinkedIn. And it was literally as simple as that. That's how I got started. I wasn't claiming to be the world's best marketing expert or a qualified psychologist. I was just sharing little things that I was learning. And actually that's enough at the start to get you going. You don't have to have it all figured out.
Do you think for like, how do you know that it's working? You know, when you start posting, and I mentioned, like, you know, like getting one, like maybe like your mum's commenting, or like, you know, hardly any people are seeing it. A lot of people want to give up early because you feel like you're not really seeing the results. How do you know if like the work that you're putting in and the posts that you're writing and the content you're creating is actually having an effect?
Yeah. So there's this thing called the plateau of latent potential, which definitely applies to
that sounds like big words.
It sounds plateau of latent potential. It sounds really complicated. What it basically means is that when you start doing a lot of things, even in personal branding, right, you expect it to grow at a linear rate. So you expect it to be consistent and linear as you start building a personal brand. You think you're going to get instant results. What normally happens is that at the start, for the first maybe 90 days, 6 months, the results are far lower than you expected. And that creates this gap between what you expect to happen and what actually happens. Most people give up in that gap. But if you keep going and you push on, you start to see exponential returns. So it's actually not linear. It's much lower at the start, but then the growth is going to be exponential if you continue. So if you just push on past the kind of the disappointment, I guess, initially of not being where you wanted to be, you're going to start to grow exponentially. So that's like the first thing. You just have to stick at it for longer.
This episode is brought to you by Invoice Home. We know a lot of you listeners are freelancers, small business owners, and side hustlers, so our newest sponsor of the Talk 20s podcast couldn't be more fitting. No matter your business type or industry, we all need to send invoices. And I've got to be honest with you, I had no idea how to do this when I first started out as a business owner. I wish I'd heard about Invoice Home back then because it would have saved me a lot of time and stress. Invoice Home is a leading online invoicing platform designed to simplify billing and invoicing processes for small businesses, freelancers, and entrepreneurs. Creating and sending professional-looking invoices at home or on the go has never been easier, as you can access your account from any device via their website or app. They offer a free and unlimited plan to suit everyone's needs. Try it today. Visit invoicehome.com to get started.
But also, anyone that's getting 5-10 likes and feels maybe it's not having any effect, you're probably reaching, even if you're reaching 50 people or 100 people with that content. Imagine if I put you on stage and told you to speak in front of 50 people. You'd probably be pretty nervous. You'd be like, that's a lot of people, right? If I put you in front of hundreds of people, you'd be like, whoa, I don't know if I can do this. This is a lot of people. You're still speaking to lots of people. It's just a different context. So remember that at the start, even 50 or 100 people, that's a lot of people. And it's 50 or 100 people more than you were reaching if you weren't doing it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's take it a little bit further along in the road. So therefore, that's for all the people who don't really know about personal branding. They've just got started and they are getting kind of familiar with it. We're now going to talk about people with a little bit more experience. They're a little bit more confident. Maybe they're a little bit further ahead in their career and they kind of, you know what they're doing. Or they're maybe like me and they have a business and they want to start really starting to put themselves in expert territory. They want people to come to them to know that they are the person to speak to about X, Y, Z. In that regard, let's talk strategy. What would you do with this person?
So the first thing you need is more people to know who you are. Mm-hmm. Right? All other things being equal, having more people know who you are is generally a good thing. Right? If you're kind of sacrificing your soul and your integrity to get more people to know who you are, maybe not. But generally speaking, having more people know who you are means there are more people in the pool of people that you could like build trust to or sell to in the future. Right. So the first thing you need to think is, how can I get in front of more people? And the way you do that is by talking about topics and concepts that they have mass appeal. They're slightly more widely appealing. Right. Lots of people will be interested in them. On platforms like LinkedIn right now, that's topics like leadership, culture, high performance. Those are the sorts of things that generally lots of people in the working world are interested in. That's going to get in front of lots of new people. What you want to do with those people then is build trust with them. Right? Lots of people knowing who you are is good, but if they trust you and they see you as an expert, that's obviously even better. So there you want to pick the topics that you want to be seen as an expert in, and you need to be sharing content on those weekly. Ideally, sharing your own experience of having success with those topics. So let's say one of the topics you want to be seen as an expert in is leadership, right? And you want to actually build authority in that. Can you share some examples where you've learned a leadership lesson the hard way, or your leadership has actually worked and it's been successful. Having specific examples of where you've succeeded with these topics adds a lot more trust to the content. It means that the advice you're sharing kind of has proof behind it. It's got some substance to it. That is the best way to build expertise and show your authority.
Mm-hmm. And how often do you think people should be posting or engaging? You know, you talk from a LinkedIn perspective mainly, but do you think people should be focused on just LinkedIn, or do you think they should be focused on other channels? And how often and frequently should we be posting?
Yeah. LinkedIn's a great channel for everyone in their careers and business because of the nature of the platform that it is. But I wouldn't limit yourself to LinkedIn. I would think, what platform best suits me? For example, if you're particularly good on video and you feel really comfortable on video, but you hate writing, use TikTok, use Instagram, use YouTube, use channels that suit you. Obviously, if you're a better writer, stick to something like LinkedIn, maybe X. So the first thing is like pick the channel that's going to work best for you. At the start, just focus on getting one post a week out. Don't set the bar too high at the start, because you'll find if you fall below it, you want to give up, and it's a recipe for disaster, right? So at the start, just focus on getting one post per week out. Once you've cracked that, maybe go to 2 and then 3. So generally, if you're a little bit more experienced and you really want to push on with your personal brand, try and post at least 3 times a week. If you can up that to 5-6 times a week, even better.
It's interesting actually, because I set myself a challenge in the past in the past month or so, to post more frequently on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I don't, you could probably say this is strategic, but I sat down, I thought about the topics that I would like to be known for. And there's 3 very clear things that I want to be known for. So I want to be known for working in media. Mm-hmm. I want to be known for being a young female entrepreneur. And I want to be known for talking about Gen Z, because that's what we obviously do with this platform. So it's all of those three interlinked. Sometimes a post, I could be talking about 2 in the same breath, and sometimes they'll just be more related to one of those different things. Yeah. And I've been writing, pulling out pictures from my phone and stuff, and writing posts and stuff like that. And I've just been genuinely experimenting. My only core thing is, as long as it's authentic and I would say it in a conversation to someone else, then I'm happy to post it, because I just think I need to get out there a little bit more. The thing that's made this probably the most interesting is the post that actually has popped off was probably the post I wrote the quickest. Yeah. I did not plan and was not strategic in the slightest. I just saw it, thought it was really interesting, and wanted to add my views on it. So I saw that M&S had launched a show on, I think it was ITV, called M&S Destination. And it's a competition show where people basically are competing to become the next top designer at M&S. And we all know M&S, like a lot of people think probably used to think my grand shop's there, but it's become a lot more cool, let's be honest, in the past few years. And I think this is absolutely incredible from the marketing team. I think this is such a smart idea, because they're probably still targeting that terrestrial TV viewer by being on ITV on primetime TV. But the format of the show, it just really worked. And they brought in Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, who does all is their brand ambassador for their lingerie. And I literally, it's the worst picture you've ever seen. It's a picture of my TV with it on pause, where I'd just been I wasn't even really watching the full thing. I was just kind of skipping through to kind of get a feel for it. Because I believe in my business and what we're doing here, that long form entertainment is how brands should be thinking moving forwards. We work with partners on lots of different projects where we think that they should get involved with long form advertising. A lot of people just think, you should just put an ad in a podcast episode. I actually think you should co-create content together. Great examples of this is Foot Asylum, where they launched their own kind of the lock-in, which was Big Brother style stuff. I really think brands should be building their own TV shows. So I was really impressed that M&S had done this. And I wrote a post that was hats off M&S, congratulations, this is really cool. And I listed why I thought it worked and why I thought it was really smart. And it has had 50,000 impressions.
Wow.
And 500 likes, and the comments in there are great. The greatest thing about it is all the connection requests I've had off the back of it, of brands, big name brands, who, and I haven't even told you about some of these, G, who've connected with me on LinkedIn because they see me now as this person who comments on how to do advertising for big name brands. That was completely by accident. Yeah. Completely by accident. Yeah. And I was just nerdy about this show. I was just I flipping love that M&S have gone about and done a long form piece of entertainment. That's great. Yeah. And just vented that online, and I found my people off the back of it. I think that's...
Do you claim to be the world's best expert on what brands should be doing? Probably
No.
not. Do you have opinions? 100%. Like,
Yeah.
just share those opinions. It's amazing what can happen when you just share your opinions. I love that.
So I think that anyone who's kind of doubting whether it's possible and, how do you know if it's working? For me, that's when I go, okay.
There's an example.
Probably
And
working.
what's the worst thing that's happened since you've been doing this experiment?
The worst thing, nothing really bad. Nothing really
There you
bad. We are probably going to get into a debate about LinkedIn in general, just like the AI, some of the AI bot comments.
Yeah.
And there is a bit of that, which we'll probably have a bit of a chat on. Like, do you think that LinkedIn, in the time that you've been on there, obviously you've started, that's where you've really grown your platform. Can you see that LinkedIn has changed? Because it really did used to be this platform where people put in their experience and it
was like
wasn't
a digital CV, wasn't it?
It was like a digital CV. It wasn't a platform where you could be a creator, and now there's LinkedIn creators. So, like, what's your view on that and how LinkedIn has changed?
Yeah, I think I got into LinkedIn 2019, 2020, when it was kind of just transitioning out of being like a digital CV into more of a social platform.
Yeah.
And for a 19-year-old lad to be posting content on LinkedIn at that time was very strange. I got a lot of stick for it. But it's changed massively now, and it's a very normal thing to do now. It has become a social platform, which I think is great. I think that transition was brilliant from LinkedIn. They clearly realised the trends, they realised the growth in the creator economy and kind of leaned on that and turned the platform into a creator platform, a social platform. Obviously, AI's come in now. That's made it more competitive, for sure, which is great for LinkedIn. Like, that's exactly what they want. They want more people using it. That's how they make their money. AI is obviously coming now. LinkedIn's trying to adopt it and weave it into the features of the platform, which I think I don't mind the intent, but I think AI is not quite as good as it needs to be for us to benefit from that yet. So right now you're getting a lot of AI spew, I'd say, and spam comments and all sorts on the platform, which kind of, it devalues it a little bit. And it becomes a little bit frustrating to see that, especially when you've got other people who are sharing genuinely insightful things, but aren't hacking the algorithm with AI, not getting attention, not getting the views that maybe they deserve. It can get a little bit frustrating, but it's not something I think that we can really do anything about.
Do you think, like, for someone like me, for example, do you think I need to be thinking about using AI when it comes to
I think you can use AI strategically to streamline content workflows, streamline research. Like, if we take the M&S example, right, you could probably use AI to quickly find some stats on how brand advertising has changed in the last 10 years. You could use AI to find that way quicker than you could use Google.
Yeah, true.
Would I recommend using AI to draft the whole post? Absolutely not, because it's going to contain zero personality and zero opinion whatsoever. It's just going to basically assimilate what's already online about the topic. So it's going to be a terrible post, look like it's written by AI, probably have not much personality, and all your connections that know you are going to be going, Gaby, what is this? It doesn't sound like you.
Definitely use ChatGPT.
Yeah.
You can tell when people are using
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, 100%.
Even when I'm scrolling through my comments, I know the ones that are genuine and ones that have basically just scraped my post, tried to summarize it into the comments and give me some kind of bullshit reply back. And I'm like, I now spend my time going through the comments going, is this a real comment? Is this genuine? You can tell, you can often tell. Should we be commenting on other people's posts and engaging in what other people have to say? How valuable do you think? We've talked a lot about how we should be posting and creating content, but how important is it to engage with other people?
Yeah, so commenting on other people's content is a form of content in itself. You're still sharing your ideas and opinions online. I think it can be valuable. Do I think you need to sit there and, rush through 50 comments a day to kind of hack the algorithm and grow your followers that way? I don't think that's that valuable. But if you see things that are interesting that you can add value to, 100% comment on them, because there could be hundreds of people reading that comment section that come across your thoughts and follow you because of it. There could be, maybe the author finds your comments really interesting and suddenly they're going to message you and you've built a relationship with them. And that's a contact that you can basically benefit from for the rest of your life. So I think there's benefit in leaving meaningful comments on posts that you actually think you can add value to. I wouldn't recommend using AI to basically spam out comments as much as possible. Just not beneficial.
When it comes to like connecting them with people, like, is there a way, because I feel like I mentioned, a few really cool people have, you know, connected with me on LinkedIn, and I don't know what to message them, really. I don't know where to say, like, hi, thanks for connecting. Like, you know, I don't really know what to say. It's cool that I could just click accept, and then they're just, I guess, in my network, and then I don't know, first connection. I don't really know how it really works, but like, I'll be able to see their posts more. Or should you be reaching out to these people? Who might be in your circle, who you think might be helpful?
Yeah, I'd say definitely reach out, but you want to have a reason for reaching out.
Exactly.
If you don't have a reason, people their mind instantly goes to, what do you want from me? And they think you're going to like send them a sales pitch or something, right? People are pretty skeptical of this sort of thing. But if you have a reason to message, it's going to be received very well. They're going to appreciate the fact that you've probably personalized that message. It might even be as simple as, you know, loved your thoughts on this post. That can be a reason for reaching out. You don't have to want anything off the back of it. You don't have to need anything off the back of it, but just have some sort of reason, some sort of common interest or something to reach out, because that's going to lower the guard that they have and mean you're probably going to get a response rather than getting ignored.
And if someone's then looking at it from a perspective of wanting to get a new job or wanting to find new opportunities, what should they be looking for? So someone's maybe building a personal brand because they are out of work or in between different jobs, or they want to change from their current jobs. What should they be thinking about? Yeah,
so I guess the base level of this is have content going out as frequently as possible, have it going out every week, because then when you do apply, even if you apply through, I guess, like the standard way of applying for a job, nowadays employers are probably going to check your LinkedIn. And if they see 6 months of content showing your interest in a certain topic, or even 3 weeks of content showing interest in a topic or their industry, that's going to hold a lot of weight in the application process. They're going to come into the interview with you basically biased towards you because they've been consuming your content. They trust you a little bit more. So that's like the foundational way. Another great way is do something. I always recommend people do something outside and above the application instructions, right? So if the application is just send a CV and a resume or a cover letter, do something beyond that. The best people we've hired have always done something beyond that. I've seen people do, so one of our account managers created like an Amazon author page of her. It was kind of like a CV, but structured like an Amazon author page. Really creative. Someone else, I saw someone, they were applying for a job in like sports media, and they presented their CV as like the BBC Sport homepage. Like little things like this that maybe take half an hour of effort to do, going to stand you out amongst all the other applicants. And it just shows like an extra level of intent, I think, that for an employer is really, really appealing.
If you're watching the Talk 20s podcast on YouTube, you'll always see that we have these drinks out on the table. They're Riviera iced tea. And I was honestly so excited when they reached out to sponsor the podcast, because I am obsessed, like seriously obsessed with iced tea. If I'm getting a meal deal, I'm getting an iced tea. If I'm on holiday and I don't fancy something alcoholic, I'm ordering an iced tea. And now here in the studio, we have iced tea on tap always, and our guests love it. Riviera iced tea is also low calorie, natural, vegan, and gluten-free. What a bonus. And the peach iced tea from them is genuinely the best I've ever tasted. You can only get these drinks online right now. So run, don't walk, over to rivieraicedtea.com and fill your fridge with something super refreshing this summer. What do you think? Because I think many Gen Zers would say, I shouldn't have to climb Mount Everest in order to get a job these days. Like, I completely agree with your point, to go above and beyond to stand out. Yeah. But there will be some people who will go, like I'm applying to lots of different jobs right now, and it feels like I have to literally, go to Timbuktu and back to get even an opportunity. Or they will do something creative like that, and they'll spend probably longer than they should have building something cool like a BBC homepage. And the response back will be, you haven't got enough experience. What do you do in those situations where you feel like it genuinely is tough to kind of get to that next stage that you want to get to kind of get a foot in the door? Like, are there any ways around it?
Yeah, I'd say part of it is kind of part and parcel of an increasingly competitive job market. It is competitive, and that's kind of part of the game now. The experience thing is harsh because I think a lot of people place too much weight on formal education and experience when actually a lot of the experience and education people get isn't necessary for the job, and actually a bit of initiative and showing that you're a self-starter and you can do things yourself should hold a lot more weight, I think. So I recognise the struggle. It is difficult. I would approach it in terms of how can I prove that I've got the expertise needed to do this job without necessarily needing the previous experience. So, for example, if someone was applying for a copywriting role, and we might say they need 2 years experience, if they've got 1 year's experience but they wrote a post for me or for themselves to present to us that was really good, that would hold a lot more weight than just happening to have an extra year's experience, right? So it's like thinking of practical ways you can demonstrate the expertise that you've got rather than just relying on number of years experience on your CV.
Some really key tips here that I think for a lot of people who are wanting to get ahead in their career and want to use personal branding as a method to get there, I think there's some really big gems that you've dropped here. We always ask our guests that come onto the show about more questions about their 20s in general. Now, although you have so much wisdom in the personal branding space, you are not old, Sam, are you?
I'm 25.
25. So, like, when you talk about personal branding, it sounds like you've got like a million years experience. Well, you've got a good chunk of experience. You've obviously been doing this since you were in uni. But in terms of your 20s, we like to talk about things on this podcast about how we all have failed at some stuff in our life, and we want to be less scared of failure. And I think it's true when you're doing a personal brand, some things are going to go well, some things are going to flop. But we like to normalize failure and that it's part of the parcel and we shouldn't fear it. So is there something that you've been through, perhaps a failure that you've experienced that you were like, I wish that hadn't happened? Maybe it shaped who I am, but it was quite embarrassing at the time.
So many.
So many. Everyone always starts with that. So many. Yeah.
Honestly, like ridiculous number. I mean, big one that I'm not afraid to share. Over the last probably 18 months, we've spent north of 100 grand, I'd say, on projects for the business that have not paid off, that have not worked, and they don't exist anymore or won't exist in a few months' time, which is obviously an expensive failure.
It's even worse when it costs money, isn't it?
Yeah, and money and ego, I think,
things
not working. But I think that's like, we've also had projects that we've tested that have worked and have really benefited, but without having that philosophy of let's just try it, let's give it a go, and not being scared of failure, we wouldn't have found the ones that had worked. So, yeah, we've had a number of projects.
Have you got an example of one that you can share that you go, we thought it would do this, but it just didn't go like that?
So I want to be a bit sensitive to people involved here, but we tried to launch this concept where we would build a load of like theme pages online. This is actually not too dissimilar from how like the agency Social Chain started. They had a load of theme pages. We tried to do a similar thing in the B2B world and build a load of like theme pages on LinkedIn that we could basically use to platform personal brands and our clients in the future. So the idea was to have 10, 20 big pages that all had loads and loads of followers that we could give our clients access to and basically get them loads of awareness and attention. And
that works really well on Instagram.
Yeah.
That format works. So you could understand where the thinking was coming from to do that.
And I still think it's a concept that will work.
Yeah.
I think just the way we executed it,
first.
we just,
If you then go and do it, you owe Sam.
Yeah, fair play. Do it better than I did. But we just didn't execute on it as well as I'd hoped. Maybe didn't give it enough attention, thought it would be easier than it was going to be. And we ended up with, I think, maybe 3 theme pages that each had a couple of hundred followers, and we never really benefited from it. So. And
was it time that cost the money to inject into that, or was it branding, or was
time, branding, salaries, all sorts. So my time, other people's time that I obviously paid for in the form of wages, branding, all sorts, and we didn't really get any return from it whatsoever. So yeah.
I think I love talking about these things. I think it's so important because there'll be someone sitting there right now that goes, I did something really similar too, and I invested a lot of time and energy, and I feel like, it was something that I, enjoyed and really thought was going to work out. And then quite often these things happen and you think it's really great, and then the reality happens and you go for it, and then you go, wasn't as good as I hoped it was going to be. And then everyone just tries to to hide it. They try to be like, you know, oh, that didn't happen. But I'm so glad, because I think that's probably one of the most helpful things that I've heard from this segment of the podcast, because these are the things that, like, we realize that, you know, everyone, you have to try stuff, because in another world that would have been an idea that would have absolutely taken off. And you have to be prepared to try these things. You have to give it a go.
Yeah, exactly. Even like we mentioned the restructuring at the start, another experiment that we ran, we didn't have proof that it was going to work. That one's paid off. So I think like...
How much of it goes off gut and how much of it goes off data?
This is a great point. So the media page one was probably pure gut. It was an idea that I'd had ever since Kurogo first existed. I always wanted to do this, and we gave it a go. But I think the mistake was there was no data to back up the decision, or we didn't have a good enough measure of whether it was working or not early enough. So we pursued it for probably 6 months longer than we should have done, just out of, I guess, ignorance and maybe a bit of ego, wanting to prove that it could work. But if we had actual data on what we should have been expecting to see, we would have been able to tell whether it was working early or not. And then adjusted from there. So I think I'm someone that acts on gut quite a lot, which has maybe caused some of these failures.
I'm sure it's caused some of your successes as well.
But caused a lot of successes as well, exactly. So that's it's just the trade-off. But I think definitely the learning is next time I will use a lot more data to actually make sure it's viable and it's going to work, and we have measures of success before we launch things.
Makes sense. Thank you so much for sharing that. The other thing we like to talk about is the fact that nobody's perfect and everybody is working through something. So whilst you have personal branding and like figured out, and you're really, you know, taking lead in that area of your life and career, is there another area of your life that you're like, I'm working through this at this moment in time, and that you wouldn't mind sharing?
I think trying to be present for like family and friends is a big one. I often find that because I'm running a business, trying to kind of make this business as successful as it can be, I think about it 24/7, all the time. And it means, although I don't tend to miss like family events and stuff, as a lot of entrepreneurs do, I'm in attendance, but sometimes I feel like I'm not present, or, my partner will tell me things in one ear out the other, and I'll completely forget. And I'm listening at the time, but instantly I forget it afterwards, which is, it might seem insignificant, but actually to people close to you, those things really matter. And it doesn't matter if you have what other people see as this big successful business if you can't be present for the people closest to you. So that's something I'm having to work really hard on and almost train myself out of doing. And to be fair, my partner's brilliant. She's kind of she's very good with it. Like, she understands how difficult it is running a business, but is great at encouraging me to switch off sometimes and learn to be a bit more present. So I'm fortunate to have great people around me, but I think that's something that I could really do with working on more.
I love that. And I think the whole part of the show is that we want to talk about and normalize this kind of thing, that like everybody is working through something. No one is the perfect person. No one out there is absolutely completely smashing every single area of their life. There will always be places where we're dropping the ball, or we feel like we could do more to for other people or for ourselves, and in so many different ways. So really appreciate you sharing that with us. Sam, it has been amazing to have you on the podcast. We have had some really like big gems we've dropped here, or you've dropped here, about personal branding. So thank you for sharing all of your knowledge with us. Sure. We always ask our guests what one piece of advice they would give to their 20-year-old selves. So we're talking about Sam 5 years ago now. If you could see him in ghost form sat on the other end of that sofa, what one thing would you want to say to him that would help him see him through his 20s?
Rather than thinking, I want the six-pack, focus on being the kind of person that's disciplined enough to go to the gym every day, the kind of person that's resilient enough to say no to the extra cookie or to the amazing brownies that Gaby gives you before the
give Sam a brownie that I'd made actually.
But yeah, focus on the kind of person you need to be in order to achieve your goals, rather than necessarily the specific things you need to do or the certain things you need to have. Focus on being a successful person, and the rest of it will take care of itself.
I love that, because I think the being is the big part of it. Like, people just want to get to that end goal, and actually you have to really live and be that person before you can even get to that. So
exactly, wise
advice. Thank you, Sam. You're definitely wise beyond your years, and I'm very excited to see what you go on to do with Kurogo.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Amazing.
Awesome.
How was that, producer G?
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like how it sounds in the
I've had some comments recently that I have a sexy voice. I don't know if I agree with this. But